Here to talk all things currency in this tumultuous market is Wells Fargo's head of currency strategy and also a Bloomberg best, Nick Bennenbroek. Nick, thank you for being with us. Sarah kind of laid out the case here. Is it a losing battle for the Bank of Japan and the Swiss National Bank to try to defend their currency and to try to weaken their currency when there isn't a global effort to sell the Japanese yen, and the Swiss National Bank can jawbone all it likes, but without actually doing anything, people are going to come back again and buy into the franc?
I think that's probably right. I mean, whether the central banks talk or whether they act, I think it's going to have very minimal impact at this particular point. And we do believe that the volatility that we've seen in the markets over the last couple of weeks will probably continue for a little while yet, maybe another 3 to 4 weeks. So in that environment, even if the central banks, the Bank of Japan or the Swiss National Bank are acting to weaken their currency, it's really not going to have much impact at all in terms of, trying, they're going to get their safe haven bid. Mm-hmm. So, we would say the Japanese yen stays pretty strong, 76, 75. And then looking at the Euro Swiss, we're around about 113 today, but that actually could drift a little lower, even back towards the 110 level.
Speaking of the euro, what's been interesting this month, over the last 2 weeks in particular, was how volatile the markets were in general, but how resilient the euro has proven to be, staying between 141 and 145. Why do you think it's been so resilient?
Well, it has been resilient, and some of the negatives for the euro have been the growth slowdown, which is becoming more apparent, and also the shift in monetary policy expectations from tightening to now even a small easing. Mm-hmm. What we're actually seeing, though, with the European money markets is some signs of slight tightness in the money markets. In terms of some of the banks having maybe a little bit of trouble borrowing between banks.
Or at least speculation of that.
Yes, and what you can see, though, is looking at the LIBOR rates relative to the overnight index swaps. There's a little bit of a premium in there in terms of caution and perhaps a little bit of hoarding of the euro. So I think that's leading to some resilience in the euro, and that's why we're not seeing the euro reacting to these more negative signals, slower growth and interest rate cut expectations.
Nick, you've talked about Asia, you've talked about Europe, bringing things a little bit closer to home. We know that Ben Bernanke is going to be out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming at the end of this week. What is the best play ahead of this strategy session? I mean, we know last year it was a game changer.
It was, and there's going to be risk around this event for sure, and it's a huge event this week. We would say probably the best play this week is to remain defensive, perhaps, on some of these commodity currencies or emerging currencies. At the end of the day, we think it's probably too early for Mr. Bernanke and the Federal Reserve to signal further quantitative easing or unconventional monetary policies. If that's the case, I think at the end of the week, there will be a little bit of disappointment. There might be a little bit of weakness in the equity markets because of the lack of that signal. And because of that, again, we would say we'd be looking at selling opportunity, commodity and emerging currencies.
Nick, thank you so much. Nick Bennenbroek joining us there. He is the head of currency strategy at Wells Fargo.